Lindsay?
I'm not a friend.
Most important.
Chopped liver.
Fine. Nobody likes me.
My
We
goodness.
love you, Laura.
Oh, good.
My mother used to have to sing, "Nobody likes me, eat those worms." I don't know where that came from. That's a weird one. The worm one.
Downtown, it's a performance day, performance class day.
I had a bad one, so somebody said, I can't think of all my names, and they just sing it, and I said,
I'm really not trying to do a striptease here. I'm just,
I gotta get there, it's gonna take half an hour to find the keys and get there.
yeah, I know, it's awful.
It is.
Too soon.
Nick and I are down
When you
there.
get a,
We have it down.
what is it?
I like the church smell, like just put me in the house.
We saw that yesterday.
She's taken on
Yep, I thought that was
$172
great.
additional.
No, I don't mind that. I want to play someone goodness.
Sure, yeah,
Yep. If they all live around here.
right.
What they do.
It's kind of interesting how it all works out. She started teaching, it's getting close to 30 years now at the fall.
She said, what?
But she doesn't teach there now, but they want to keep her name on the list. So she uses their concert hall for her performance classes. Yeah, perfect. So, yeah, so she, so those Sunday classes, but it's mainly the students who are short. Some on the south side. So it's that group. But they need it for fall, so, and then their name is still on that list. Might be yeah, right, of course,
Oh, well, it seems like it's
That's wonderful. In the
going,
south.
so I don't know if
Okay, then I
we're pretty
awesome.
And she didn't even know how big this was.
Oh,
All right. We're going to get started. Well, we are going to get started eventually. No, that's fine. The problem is that, I always think an hour, like we really need to stop at like a few minutes before 10. And I'm like, all this time. And it just like flies by. It's crazy. And then we're at 10 o'clock. We're like, oh, how do we stop? But anyway, I'm going to welcome you to this new series, this adult formation series called Who is My Neighbor? Or Where, and I think Joanne added that clever thing, Where is the Love? Who is My Neighbor? I like it. I just want to start by saying I think this concept of neighbor is central to the Christian life and what we're about. So it's a great topic to explore and really open up and use as a centering piece for a series. So I think I do like to do introductions and have people go around and say who they are. So we'll start with Zoom. We'll start with, I'm going to name you. So Laura Waterman is there. Hi, Laura.
Hello.
What is your role?
I am the Temple Goy. Currently I'm hosting it. So.
And then Edna, do you want to introduce yourself?
Edna Hetherington, I'm here. I hope I'll be with you in person soon.
We do too, but it's great having you on Zoom. That's good.
It is.
And then Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Lindsay. I'm happy to be here. I will be in person occasionally. Today was just a little bit rough getting up for other members of the family, but we'll be back at St. Mark's when our youngest can be fully vaccinated. So hopefully that'll be sooner rather than later. And special hi to the bots. I miss you guys. I miss you all, but
Well, thank you, Lindsay, and it's great to have you on Zoom is a great thing too. So we have Joanne. Well, let's go around. Just say your name and maybe one snippet.
Hi, I'm Joanne. I am George's sidekick.
That's a snipe. No.
I'm Cecilia Smith. I'm George's other sidekick.
Oh. She saved the better half.
I'm Jerry Carey, and I'm George's friend.
Oh, now don't have it centered around me, but anyway.
And I got to be George's sidekick for a year or two when I was warden, sitting in warden chair.
And an excellent one. Oh my gosh, Peter.
Legendary.
I'm Virginia, and we were happy to be here for 12 years. We moved to Nashville 2 years ago, and we love being at the Episcopal Church there as well. And just happy to be here. And I'm George's friend.
This went in a strange kind of like, I did not expect it. And Richard.
Oh, Richard Borowski. I'm a relative newcomer to the area. I've been here before, and I'm happy to find a church family.
And we are too.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I'll go back to Judy there.
I'm Judy Johnson. I'm also new. I've been here 3 weeks, new to Glen Allen and to St. Mark's, and I just met George.
I tried to bring it.
Ashley?
I'm Ashley. I'm new in person to St. Mark's, and still relatively new. Started watching you guys on YouTube in May, so a lot of faces are familiar, even though I have not.
Great.
Really cool.
And May, go back to you.
I'm May Anstey, and I was going to say I'm the fly in George's ointment because I do altar duty, and I'm always asking him 1,000 questions.
No, I'd say you're the ointment, May. And Josh?
Yep, I'm Josh. I'm on vestry here, and I don't know who that guy is.
And that's actually, we're going to get to that, so that's cool. Jim?
I'm Jim Tarolese, and Michael and I are pretty new to your church as well. We joined, what, 5, 6 weeks ago, something like that? And we just moved from Florida. Yes, indeed.
And I'm Michael Tarolese. It's very good to be here.
Great. Well, thank you. I think, the introductions, I mean, like, we even get a taste of, like, who are our neighbors, like, right in this room. And I love that there are some very, brand new people to this St. Martin community, because you bring great freshness and ideas, and those people who've been around a long time, like May, also, you bring freshness too, but,
No,
I agree that we've always done it this way.
we've always done it this way. That's the history, Well, our topic is neighbors, and I really want to dive right in and talk a little bit about, there's this great tool, there are these Bible browsers, and you can put a word in, and it'll tell you all the instances of that word in Scripture. So you put in neighbor, you got to spell it the English way, B-O-U-R, because if you put B-O-R, nothing. I'm like, wait, there's no neighbor in the Bible? Oh, no, that can't be true. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's B-O-U-R, and then 204 times it appears, which is pretty significant. But the other thing, it's spread all over the place. So the first incidence is in Exodus, and it's talking about you can get silver and gold from your neighbors. I mean, so it's not like a profound sense, but there it is. It's in Exodus. It's in Leviticus. Leviticus 19 says this: you shall not defraud your neighbor. You shall not steal, and you shall not keep for yourself the wages of a laborer until morning. So right there in Leviticus, in the law, the way that we treat each other, the word neighbor becomes very important. In Proverbs, there it is. And I'm not going to list the 204, but I just want to give you a little taste. So in Proverbs, do not plan harm against your neighbor who lives trustingly beside you. That's Proverbs 3:29. It made me think about, we went to Scotland in my sabbatical in 2014 to a town, Glencoe. And there's just a horrendous story there where the English soldiers were there, and the people there put them in their homes and gave them food, and then they slaughtered their guests. The English soldiers then killed the hosts. I mean, it sends shivers. I just can't believe it. And so think about the atrocities that people
Campbells.
do to each other.
It was the Campbells.
The Campbells. Ecclesiasticus, as much as you can, aim to know your neighbors and consult with the wise. So that's really like the centerpiece. Aim to know your neighbors. Matthew, why do you see the speck in your neighbor's eye but do not notice the log in your own eye? Who's heard that one before? Who practices that? No one. Galatians, Paul's letter. We know this. Paul wrote this letter, and he said, "For the whole law is summed up in a single commandment: you shall love your neighbor as yourself." And then James, we've been hearing from James. We just heard this in the past couple Sundays. You do well if you really fulfill the royal law according to the Scripture: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So then, one of my favorites is from Luke, chapter 10, 25 through 37. And I guess I'd like would somebody like to read that? I have it printed out here. That passage from Luke. Who'd like to read it?
All right.
Wait, are there?
Unless anybody else wants to.
Wait, Virginia, were you wanting
Peter
to?
was volunteering.
Peter was volunteering. Virginia? No, okay. There you go.
Yeah.
That's not a good neighbor. Peter volunteering your wife. Okay.
Yeah. Just then a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he said, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" He said to him, "What is written in the law? What do you read there?" He answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And he said to him, "You have given the right answer. Do this, and you will live." But wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell in the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, 'Take care of him, and when I come back, I will repay you whatever more you spend.' Which of these 3, do you think, was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" He said, "The one who showed him mercy." Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise."
Thank you, Josh. Well, this is such a famous piece of scripture, right? We often call it, the Good Samaritan. We have hospitals named after it, and we often say, well, that's a Good Samaritan there. And I just want to say hi. Obviously, Sue Meinlander joined us on Zoom. Good to see you. We're glad you're with us. So in this, this could be unpacked for, there are volumes devoted to this one parable. But the question often is who is the neighbor here? I think there are 2 answers to that. Who are the neighbors that Jesus is kind of illustrating in this parable? So there's obviously the man on the side of the road, right? We think, well, that's the neighbor that we should take care of, right? Which is true, right? But I think that the surprise in this is that who is the one that helped the man on the side of the road? That was the Samaritan. And so Jesus is implying that actually the Samaritan is the neighbor. He is the neighbor to the man on the side. And so, but when we hear that word Samaritan, well, that's interesting. He's just one. There was a Levite, there was a Pharisee or a priest, and this Samaritan, blah blah blah. But Samaritans, we know, were this hated, despised group, right? So, what would we substitute for Samaritan today in our world? What would we call that? What would we put? Who would be like a group of people that we think are bad? May?
I would say those people who don't agree with me politically.
Ah, okay.
I just go right to the chase there.
Right.
But really,
Right, so you might put it in, you know, whatever, you might say those Trumpers or those Democrats, you know, I mean, like whichever group you might find like distasteful, you might just for yourself put that in there. So I think our political groups right now would be that. So any others?
Well, I think a real twist and something that would be difficult for me, or a good lesson for me, would be, for me specifically thinking about anti-vaxxers, because they're not, I don't see them as people who care for others. And if it were to be one of those, that would be a lot to process and understand.
So an anti-vaxxer while traveling came near him and saw him and was moved with pity.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's a really good one, because I'm with you on that. It's a hard group for me to understand. I don't know, Joanne, how about you? Anti-vaxxers is probably one of yours, I would think.
Yeah, this one is really kind of hitting me when you mentioned that, May, because, you know, you hear this parable over and over and over again. Some of you might not know I'm a physician by training, and so I feel myself getting mad sometimes because, yeah, they have a worldview that's against everything I believe in, and yet here they are in my office with their complaints, listening to some things and not others. Makes me a little mad.
So people on Zoom, any comments from you? I see Jim Grodelucian has joined us. Good to see you, Jim. Wonderful that you are with us. So the question is, who would be the Samaritan that you would like put in there for yourself, a group that you find really difficult to deal with? Or you're on mute, Jim.
I agree with Joan on the anti-vaxxers. There are so many people who protest things that I put many protesters in there.
Those people who don't turn off their phones. No,
that was my landline.
Okay. Well, that's a good sounding landline line. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Jim. No, that's good that's that seems to be resonating with us. Anybody else in here want to add in a group?
Yeah, sure.
Sure. QAnon.
Oh, God, yeah.
As a librarian, I resonate with that. Like, are you kidding me?
You know, I think, I just in everything we've been through, the people who deny that the vaccine, the virus is real, stuff like that, that's really hard. And it hits you, can hit you really personally. Thank you. So I think that when Jesus, when this parable was circulating, it really, I think it was hard, really, that Jesus is saying, that's my neighbor, that's who we need to love. Okay, so there we go. I wanted to, with that, I wanted to write on this white paper here some definitions of neighbors. So I think, when I'm thinking of neighbors, I often think that in a different, often it goes to geography, right? Yeah. So I'm just going to put that down, geography, and that would be your own neighborhood, right? There's Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, and that really, that scene of kind of a bucolic, and that's my neighborhood. Those are my neighbors, right? So that's not an incorrect answer, but what can we? Well, let's just start adding to this. So we've got geographic neighbors. What are other neighbors? How do we try to get into the fullness of what a neighbor is? May.
Okay, I would just say our church family. That's maybe more than a neighborhood.
So we have the neighborhood of our church family, right? And our neighborhood in St. Mark's is kind of disjointed sometimes because, we have services at 8. We've had a 9:15. We're not doing that right now during this pandemic, pre-post-pandemic time, 10:30 and 1 o'clock. And like, it's really difficult for us to all know each other because of that. But the church family is certainly a neighborhood. Virginia?
It's kind of geography, but in more than your own neighborhood of a few blocks, your community, the town or the city where you live. And for us in Nashville and the county are the same. So people say, oh, you live in Nashville? We do. But about 25 years ago, they made them be the same. So Nashville is actually an entire county. So, and it has an impact. You think of, more people as part of my town where I live.
Do you know that Illinois has more towns than any other state in the nation?
No, I didn't know.
There are more incorporated
I
towns.
believe that because I know it has more library districts.
It's interesting, we're I think the sixth most populated state, fifth or sixth, right there with Pennsylvania, but the most towns, interesting. So the city area, and I think like Houston is like a giant, geographic area. Interesting. So the city area where you live, what else? What are other neighbors? Yeah.
It's probably that you work with, whether you work with them closely or whether you're in the same field. Like I think of other printmakers that I might or might not know are still my neighbors if they're doing the same thing, dealing with the same questions and processes.
And that can be limitless geography, right?
Yes.
And I know so many people are working, like Jane Moore has been working on Zoom for years, and her colleagues are all over the country, right? She never sees them in person, but they really have close relationships, which is interesting. Yeah, Peter.
And we use a big term, people who serve us. We've just been served us. We've been in a hotel, and there'll be some cleanup after us. Moving in a new condo, we hire people locally to come and fix things for us. We go to the restaurant because we're on travel, and there are people who serve us.
The service industry,
Lots
right?
of people who serve us every day. People who go to the store, someone who goes to the library, check out a
Yeah. I want to make sure Zoom people, anybody have any ideas on Zoom about like expanding our, hey Joyce, you're our neighbor. Good to see you.
I'm a neighbor too.
Hey David.
I'm a neighbor too. Are you?
What about our biological neighbors? So if we say biology is a class for neighbor, who would be our neighbors? Right, so what would that be? What's the extended family? Like, where do you draw the line? Yeah.
Aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, children.
Do you have like our third cousins, do they count or not? Like, where do you draw the line?
Right.
I want to be like, I'm being a little bit silly here because I think it's everybody who inhabits this planet, right? We all are we all are brothers and sisters, so it could be the entire human family. If we really want to, I've been doing some genealogy from my great grandfather, and it's interesting to see like there were 6 children, and like then all of those cousins, and I'm trying to keep it in, and it's just like I feel like by doing that I'm connected to all those people, but I haven't met a lot of them, but I feel like close to them in a way. Doing that, just kind of that exercise, is really, it's interesting.
I feel like ancestry draws the line at 3rd to 5th cousin.
Okay.
Sure, yeah.
Keep
Third
getting
to
these,
fifth cousin.
Right.
these notifications.
Nothing past the 5th cousin. You don't
Right,
get
3rd to 5th cousin.
Yeah.
What was that?
Laura Ingalls Wilder is not your neighbor.
No.
Yes, she is.
She's 8th cousin, wait.
7th cousin, twice removed, Laura Ingalls Wilder, right? Yes, applaud. See, I'm very proud of her. She's my cousin. Yes, Jim?
George, when you said the word biological, I thought of animals. We just saw the Jane Goodall exhibit, and 98% of the chimpanzee DNA is the same as humans. So I think of those as biological neighbors and maybe even pets.
Yeah.
I talk to my dog a lot.
I mean, how many people actually probably love their pets more than they do other people? I mean, Joyce and David. You're my Samaritan. But like pets are this great way for people to connect. There was a couple walking their greyhounds Flyer in front of the church, and I was able to say hello, and you know Flyer? That's Flyer. Flyer. I got anyway. And, so Flyer. Right. But you know, so anyway, pets, and I think that's and animals. And Joyce, what were you?
Well, as an adopted parent, I get all uncomfortable when people talk about family being biological ancestry, because, you know, our son is our family, and I just think that people get really caught up in bloodlines and all sorts of things. I'm like, who cares? And I'm really sensitive about that when people say things.
So I want to say it's both and, because I would say Andrew is related to you biologically. He is, right? I mean, you might not be able to say, okay, he's my this, but he is biologically related to you, absolutely, right? In a very close way. You may not be able to trace it, but
not in the way that most people talk about it.
Well, most people are bad.
Sure. Seriously, you
finally we agree on something.
I know.
You said the opposite of that.
No, I think, well, most people are bad in that sense. Yeah. No, but I mean, I think that I just want to say, I think it's interesting the people you're related to, like, closely through parents and so forth. But I think ultimately the Christian perception is that every single person is my brother and sister, or my cousin, my child, you know, how you relate.
Well, you know, we grew up with the Bot's daughter Susie and Andrew. I think really thought they were cousins.
I think they still do.
And they still do, because they've been together all their lives.
They're so cute.
And we used to sing a song that Tom Chapin wrote, a kid's song that's called "We're a Family and We're a Tree." Our roots go deep down in history, and it shows how everybody's all connected, and I really loved that.
That's exact. I mean, I think that's right on. So, I certainly think the biology is a way. Anybody on Zoom? I just want to make sure you guys are. If you wanted to say anything. No? Are we good? Okay. I also wanted to think about, well, in keeping with animals and biology, listening to the On Being this morning, it made me think of the trees and the environment. So is the environment our neighbor?
Not one we treat very well.
Well, we don't treat neighbors very well, do we, a lot of the time? But I mean, I would say, so in this, so On Being, Krista Tippett is this morning, it's a what is it, podcast, right? But it runs on BEZ in the mornings on Sunday at 7 a.m. But this morning she was interviewing a woman, a botanist, who studied forests. That these forests, I mean, what she's found is under the ground, they're like sharing and helping each other. The mature trees are helping the younger. They're all connected, right? And what what that revelation, what that means. But it just made me think about, we are so connected to the trees and to all of the forest and fauna around us, and like, so isn't that our neighbor? Like, the trees are neighbors to each other, they're neighbors, so they provide us with oxygen, and like, they're our neighbors, so the environment in an expansive way. So I want to, and then I also was thinking about, this is the hard part here. I know, Joanne, if you want to put this up, that'd be good. So what about, like, over time? We have the past neighbors, the present, and the future neighbors. So it's another kind of. So I've been interested in the neighbors who were here before the European settlers came. So do you know what the tribe was called? The one we know that was immediately here, the Potawatomi. I'm going to try to spell it. P-O-T-T. I wrote it down. Potawatomi.
What?
I think they're
always mess it up.
The Potawatomi were here. So the first settlers we know came around 1834. I don't know. There might have been some French people before then, but the settlers were in 1834. So they started, building residences and so forth. Isn't do you know what's the corner? Who were the first family that came here? Which one? No, I'm thinking in Glen Ellen. There was a homestead. Maybe Stacy, something like that. So we know all about them, right? And they had a lot of, but the Potawatomi were here, and what were they doing? Like, where this church is, there may have been some kind of, it was part of their area. It was part of their community. So the past, like, how do we, do we acknowledge that? Do we want to know about that? I think, there's a lot of suffering that then is involved in knowing what happened to those people. And, like, we didn't push them out, right? This is the whole thing about, like, slavery, right?
They're alive and well, so we should never think that they're gone. Like
the Potawatomi.
People are alive and well.
There are Potawatomi people still around in existence, right? Descendants, right? But there were Potawatomi people right here. But then there were also those European settlers. I mean, that's part of the past, and they lived here. And who were they? And they're our neighbors. And then, there were the people who started St. Mark's, and it was 1897. We were kind of we were not the first church in Glen Ellen by any means. And they didn't think that this church was going to survive. People still wonder. I'm one of those, but I think that's okay. We don't want to get too confident, right? We want to know that we exist by the grace of God. And so then, who are our present neighbors? This is, I think, a lot of the focus of our series, right? Who are these people living around us? And it relates to people, but we can also expand it to other things as we go forward. But the people, who are our neighbors here? And they're the Tabacks across the street, but there's also the Glen Ellen Bible Church, and they're the family that lives in the rectory now, the Webb Hutters. I mean, these are just people right around us. Then there's the future neighbors, and we think about that. Who are those people? You know that what's happening to the place where we live over time? Do you know? What would you describe the demographic changes that are happening around us?
Well, you've got that building going up where Geshe's shoe store was, so there'll be a lot of, I think a lot of singles or a lot of people without families, which is different. Glen Ellen was always a family-oriented community, and that's the children. The focus was always on the children, and I think that's changing. For better or for worse. I have no opinions, but
so our reputation here has been one of families with children, right?
Traditional families.
Thank you. That's my favorite.
Right. Yeah. Traditional families with children.
Upper middle class.
Right.
Not rich, but money.
And money. I mean, this is an affluent community. But what's happening, Joyce? What's
Well,
happening?
there's more diversity in terms of ethnicity, religion, non-religion, than there has been.
We have all sorts of households that are, different than they used to be in the 1950s or wherever, right? I mean, and so this diversity in all ways. I mean, we have many people who are single households, right? We have 2 dads in the household. Sometimes there are 3 people, grandparents, children living at home. I mean, and as you said, the religious diversity. Faith and no
Which
faith.
I think no faith is the fastest growing faith demographic, right?
But I would say, like, the number of people who are Muslim is really going up.
What they called
to none.
Religious but not, or spiritual but not religious.
Yeah,
I think that's
right.
the phrase.
Either the way around.
No, I know, exactly.
So in Glen Ellen, there's the Ahmadiyya community, which is on near 53 in Butterfield, and then across from them there's a Hindu, what is it called? Chicago. I can't remember, but that's new. That used to be a Methodist church, right? And now it's a Hindu community. And if you go down,
In Wheaton, there's a Sikh Guadalajara that used to be a clubhouse for a community, and then was a Free Methodist church. And now
right now
a
it's
Sikh
non-Christian,
community.
right?
Sikh.
And then on Swift Road, there's a big mosque development there. What's the name of that mosque? Do we know? I'm not even sure, but they've been building it. And there's one on Roosevelt Road when you go under the expressway on the right. They're building. It's been under construction for like 4 years, but it's growing. So anyway, future is diverse, is more diverse, right? And it could be that the population here is kind of stable, but with more density, the population could be going up and changing. So these are our neighbors, and what do we think about that? You know, how do we, should we be aware of that? And what do we do? I don't have the answer to that, but I think having knowledge of it and orienting ourselves to that is important in some way. You could fight it, right? I think that's something that people want to do. They don't want to change. They want to keep Glen Ellen the way it was, whatever that is, you know. But anyway, so I think all of these ways of thinking of neighbor is part of what we should be expanding, you know, our definition. So, I guess a question then is, any other things from Zoom, or anybody here want to add in anything? So part of our adult formation is to be very interactive, so I hope that I'm not, I want, all ideas are good here. So a question is, how do we get to know, if we're concerned a lot about our neighbors, right, who live around us, you know, and this is a good place to start, right, because that's the people who live right next door to us, the people in this community, so how do we get to know people?
Well, one of the reasons why I'm not there in person right now is because we had a really big day yesterday because we had a neighborhood block party. And every year around this time, there's just a huge neighborhood block party where we close off the street and everyone's invited to a potluck and just talking to each other. So that sort of thing can be, you know, just big neighborhood potlucks can be replicated or mirrored in different ways. Just big invitations to, with food and music and that sort of thing to draw people just to come for the conversation and the friendliness and the sense that we're a single, or that, you know, that we're a diverse but unified community. So
Lindsay, a block party is a really good example because I wrote some things. I think, how do we get to know our neighbors? Well, I think one of the things is we have to prepare.
Yeah.
Do that. We have to be like deliberate. So block parties are deliberate, right? You have to plan.
Yeah.
It's actually a good, so you have to be deliberate. We have to like want, or we have to make it intentional, right? I think we have to have an attitude that is, we have to prepare also with an attitude. Like, so when we're going to meet people or get to know them, what kind of attitude is important? You can have an attitude of skepticism. I think what to me, I think a good attitude is one of curiosity and openness, right?
going back to the story, the original story, I don't want to assume, but the rabbi didn't even acknowledge that that man was on the side of the road. If he did, he just said, I'm going to acknowledge it by being on the other side of the road. And ignoring.
Well, right, he did acknowledge it, right?
Right,
By
yeah.
going to the
Yeah.
other side, you're right, that's really important. Like, he said, he knew he was there, but chose to go to the other
So,
side.
you know, keying off of what was the block party idea, just to acknowledge, to know that these are our neighbors, and to start from that, at least to look and see them.
I think we have to change the paradigm, because when I grew up in New Orleans, many years ago, it was before this thing called air conditioning.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
In the morning, the neighbors would get out, the people were going to work, usually the men, and the wives would go down, and then the men would leave, and the neighbors would all be together. Then after the sun went down in the evening, because there was also no television, the entire neighborhood was out. I knew all of my neighbors intimately. I was invited into their homes without knocking. I mean, we just, we were all like a family, and we all knew each other. And then I think this air conditioning came along, and we sealed ourselves into our buildings. Television has pulled the attention away from communication with each other, you know. So we want to, you know, so the block party we had one every day. We didn't have to plan it. People would bring things. People would come because that's what we did. You know. Now, if we want to be creative, we got to think about how to reproduce that attitude, that kind of communication, without giving up our niceties like air conditioning. I mean, I like creature comforts as much as anybody.
Like a maximum level, like of 78, right?
Yeah.
So
Right,
you can't get lower than 78.
Can't go lower.
Josh, what were you going to say?
So, two things, so like what we can do for ourselves to prepare is doing that studying. Like what we should probably end up now that everybody in the room felt weird that we don't know what the name of the mosque is, we should go read it. So doing our own like reading or our own digging is a good thing. And the other thing I think is knowing what our own like comfort level is, and then knowing when to push that and when to be okay with it. Because I think it's really easy to get all excited and be like, oh, we're going to do all this really, really great stuff. And then either burned out, trying to do everything and not having anything really specific, or trying to do too much. But just knowing our own limits. And
I think I put commitment to it and the long haul.
Right.
Right. So we're not talking about like a flash in the pan.
Right.
Morning.
And it's easier to get excited about the flash in the pan. We're going to do all this great stuff that's going to happen right now. And then either a couple of roadblocks or some volunteers don't show up, or the people we're going to get to know, something happened with their family. So
You saw one of my slides was the golden key.
Yeah.
Right. That's a false.
Yeah.
Right. And some of these like just short-term things. Not. So I think long haul is good. Thank you. That's great. I think time. Time is it's costly, right? And knowing that neighbors this is hard. Ashley.
Something that I think is interesting too is to note that other cultures are more neighborly than ours. So I think that a good way to get to know neighbors is to get advice from people who do neighbors better.
Yeah. So advice. Wow, can you imagine that other people know how to do things better than we do? I mean, like, come on. Is that possible? No, that's great.
And I do say that coming from a bit of I'm from a very, very rural area. So it's weird to me that people can live next door to somebody for 20 years and not know them. Like at all. That I still, as long as I've lived here, I've never.
Don't you think it's almost like it's ironically reversed, so that if you're farther away, like you need those people more and you get to know them, and here, it's like there's so many people like I don't even know those people next to us. It's interesting.
It's one of the things that I thought coming here that I realized, I feel more comfortable in like the neighborhoods in Chicago because it feels more like home than the suburbs. which I wouldn't have expected urban to feel more comfortable than suburban.
Interesting. Yeah, Virginia.
So, another key word this time is talking. So we've moved to a new place, and the habit of saying hello to everyone you see. In Nashville, you cannot walk by anyone, anywhere, without waving hello, saying hello, and then possibly saying something more like good morning, or, and smiling. And so every single time people go by each other, they have an interaction. And
so the northern opinion of that is that's superficial, Virginia, right? That's only skin deep. But I think it's, I mean, like, I don't,
but
then
when you
we shouldn't just say.
experience it, it's not superficial.
No, but I'm just saying that that's like, we shouldn't dismiss that, because that should be part of it, right? But does that only go skin deep, or does it go deeper?
Well, you know, I think one thing it does is create an opportunity for knowing your neighbors. If you're going to be already talking to people, so people who are homeless in Nashville, there's an organization called the Contributor, and homeless people can join it and sell newspapers, and there's a lot more neighborliness with people who are on the street than here. It's very friendly and interactive, the same.
Yeah, the people who are homeless in this community are, it's really awkward, isn't it? They're like little bubbles of.
I'm not saying it's not.
No, I mean, it's like there's a force field around them, and there's nobody like.
Another way to relate there.
Yeah.
And I think it comes from the fact that we always say hello to everybody, so that means we're also going to say hello to people who are in a wheelchair at a corner.
I was going to add to the block party thing is that it's food. Food is such a great way. That's a fun way to get to know people in other cultures, right? Tasting recipes and things that people love from elsewhere. I know that the women's group they had some recipes that they were sharing from around different cultures. Did anybody go to that here, that women's? Yeah, what was there some of that there?
Nobody shared recipes, but
Not recipes, but dishes.
But well, the women from the 1 o'clock service, because we were celebrating Mexican independence, brought wonderful, delicious food from Mexican culture. I think I was the only Anglo that brought anything in that because it was from our celebration of independence. So I brought, easy for me to do, watermelon.
Oh. I mean, that's good. I mean, that's something that you felt like represents you, or
well,
maybe your
that's
culture.
kind of a 4th of July kind of
Right,
food.
represents
Right.
the culture.
So yeah.
So I think food, and I think all these things are good. So I think in terms of what happens here in our adult formation is that we can actually be ambassadors and do this work, and then bring back and share stories. I think that would be a really great part of this. Yeah, John.
Looking at both small connections and big events, and you have both. They inform each other.
So both, like, we talk about one-on-ones in community organizing. Those are just the coffee you have with somebody you get to know, but then there are also the block parties, right? Or I guess yesterday was there a barbecue fest in Ellen? Did anybody participate in that here?
I did.
Yeah, what did you think?
I mean, it's great. I think it was, I saw maybe 15 faces that I knew, and everybody's having a good time. The School of Rock musicians played, and then other people for everything. So just keep doing that kind of stuff, even if it's the stupid carnival that I think is ridiculous. I love it when it's there. Yeah.
Take off Sunday. Give away free hot dogs. Right, you give away free hot dogs, and you see who comes. We sent a postcard out to 5,000 houses, and have you seen that postcard? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go. You want to get join?
It shows only mustard on the hot dog, which I approve.
They're in the narthex, so you should pass it around. So we may I talked to a woman who came to the funeral yesterday for Ann Hacker. Her name is Anisha, and she works at the Philip Rock Center. And she got the postcard, and she's like, I'm going to come and fellowship with you. And I'm like, great. You know, like, come for hot dogs tomorrow at 11:30, or, you know, you don't have to come to church if you don't want to, but you're welcome to. We'd love to have you. But anyway, so the kickoff Sunday is something we're trying to do to so yeah, we want to pass them around. And then this would be something. Pardon me?
To encourage us to attend.
No, I think you can give one to your neighbor. You could say, even though it's kickoff Sunday is past, but you know, you could say, this is my church, and I'd love for you to come.
I'm curious, I wanted to ask
some more,
Lindsay.
Joanne. Seeing the shortage here. So I had planned.
I was just curious, I wanted to ask Lindsay, did you meet new neighbors?
Yes, there have been some people who have moved in that I hadn't really gotten a chance to get to know. So even though it wasn't the first time I had seen them, I had my first conversations, real conversations with some other mothers, and my daughter got to know some neighborhood children that she hadn't really gotten to know, but they go to the same school. And so yeah, it was nice. One other thing about that block party was, of course, we all live on the same general block. So we have a common location that we feel belongs to all of us. And I'm thinking, like, that's hard to draw people from. It's great to have invitations into our own church, but that space that's ours that others are coming into, that can be very neighborly. But something like a planning with leaders of other communities in a location like a park, a common park or something, is another thing that where everybody, you know, where people. No one feels sort of out of place or like a guest or like a host, because there's a commonality of, you know, we're coming to know each other, and no one is more at home here than anyone else. There's no lesser feeling. So location, which is, you know, that's not the be all and end all of everything. Inviting people into the St. Mark's space is a huge, wonderful, beautiful thing. But thing about block parties is a location that everyone feels equally a part of. And so how to do that with people from other places.
Where that any location
Yeah.
has a limit, right? Like,
right.
Everybody feels comfortable going to Lake Ellen. It's like, what's there? You know, or even a block party. Some people might feel intimidated by the block party, even your own neighbors, you know.
Oh,
so
yeah.
We have to, like, no one thing does it all, right? So I think that's why I appreciate Josh saying, you know, both or all, like small, large locations, you know, so it's many things. Well, I think a cool thing from this meeting today, and we're next week, is that, Lindsay, are you on?
Yes.
Do you want to give us a preview?
I'm sorry?
Do you want to give us a preview of next week?
Well, I'll try to be in the church in person. We're going to, I'm sorry, I honestly don't want to give a preview. I need more time to think exactly about what I'm doing. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be fun. I'm going to spend a lot of time on it in the very near future, but I have not spent much time on it in recent past, to be completely honest. So I'm sorry.
Yourself, right? Because we get to know you. That was one of the things I wanted to do today, was tell you more about me, because there are things that you probably don't know about me, but we don't have time. So we will do that another time. I was going to start with my parents and tell you about all of that. There's so many cool things about my family growing up. Some of them very wonderful, some of them very difficult. And so that's part of the stories of who we are and where we come from. And I mean, a lot of people want to know like how I ended up going to seminary, which is boring. No, but there are other things too that are good. But you know, we can tell our stories. But I do think that if you maybe get some experiences of meeting somebody new that you didn't really, this maybe has put you in that mode to do that, and you can bring back a story of somebody that you met. Yeah, Joyce.
Well, I think even at church, we tend to talk to the people we already know.
Yeah.
When I was on vestry, one of the charges George made to us was to talk to somebody new every week. And I think that, you know, we can become insulated in our own church and not be neighborly, or have fear, like maybe I should know who you are, but I don't, and that's embarrassing to come up to you and say, you know, I haven't met you, or I have met you and I can't remember your name. You know, that can be difficult, so people avoid it rather than confront their own.
What you do now is say, oh, I didn't recognize you at the mask.
Right. There you go. Yeah. Well, like in this room, then we have people who are relatively new, including Judy and Richard and Ashley and Michael and Jim. I mean, like, and one of the problems is you get to know, like, so I met Ashley and I could, all right, now I know you, we're done. I mean, it's like, wait, you went a little bit in, but then you really know? I mean, like, the relationships can keep evolving, but you have to, you know, want that depth and keep going for it. So in this room, there are opportunities to have coffee or to talk and get to know people. But maybe that would be a really fun thing, is to have some, you know, somebody can check in and say, you know, this is a neighbor I met, and this is how it went. Maybe not, you know, to talk about them, but like it was awkward or it went really well and this worked well. So I think that would be great. Well, we're at the hour. I knew that we'd be pushing at 10 o'clock, and I'm like, seems to fly by. But thank you, everybody, and I hope you'll come back and ask other people to come to this series. This is a really good turnout. I think we almost had as many people here for Peter's presentation a couple weeks ago. And Peter and Virginia, I just thank you so much for being here. They had, Peter did an artist talk on Friday that was incredible, and I just want to give them applause because it's so wonderful. And thank you for those on Zoom. It works really well, and just glad that you're here. And if you have comments about how you can participate easier, let me know. It's great to see you. And Laura, I'm going to sign off here, and then we'll sign on in the church.
All right. Okay, and I will say that next week we will be looking at the book of Acts and the birth of the church and the moment of Pentecost. I'm not sure how to explain it beyond that, but speaking in our own languages and understanding each other, what does that mean? What does it mean to be fully ourselves and understand one another in the fullness of yourself and be together as a community and a body?
So that's a pretty good preview. Lindsay, you said you didn't have one.
I wasn't quite ready to describe it on the spot. I should have written something down. Or, you know.
That was wonderful. Okay. All right, I'm going to sign you off soon, people. Take care.
And I have to shut it down so I can restart it so it's a new session. So I will see you all in a minute.